नमस्ते। मेरा नाम अनुराग है और जैसे कि हम हर समय समय पर श्याम जी और हम मिलकर एक अपना, यू कैन कॉल इट अ पॉडकास्ट, यू कैन कॉल इट अ, वी कॉल इट ऑनलाइन सत्संग. So we do a online satsang where we, dive deep into a particular topic, and Shamji shares his insight. And Shamji is a seeker. He's a seeker who dive deep into meditation and come up with some insights. And he's more become like a, that the scientists, the rishis used to be in the past, and they used to come up with some insight and share. So he, time to time, Shamji comes up with his insights from the meditation sessions he does, and then he share those insights with everybody. This is what he's going to do now. And then we kind of share our ideas. We dive deeper into those insights and look at, generally I also get a chance to look at from the point of view of scriptures, how knowledge says it, how scripture says it, and how Gurudev has put those knowledge into perspective. So this and these insights can be very, very practical, very useful, especially for spiritual seekers, for people who are on the path and who is interested in the deeper spiritual knowledge, and who doesn't shy away from diving deep and discussing the deeper aspects of the knowledge. So this is what we are going to dive into. Yes, Shamji, please.
आज के टॉपिक के इंट्रोड्यूस कर दीजिए।
Yeah, so today's insight, what Shamji has come up is, we learn, and he said I learned it is, but I have just changed it to say, we learn in a gap. Yeah, we learn in gap. Yeah, Shamji. So
इस
there's,
इस टॉपिक को इंट्रोड्यूस करना चाहेंगे आप?
there are three variation came when I have written reply to Shamji that we will be doing this satsang take in those gaps. So that's the first thing. But then Shamji said, no, it's gap, it's not gaps. And then first topic that I shared is, we learn in a gap. Then I corrected. I said, no, we learn in gap. Now this itself gives an insight on the topic. So it is not a gap and it is not gaps. It's a gap. It's beautiful. It's beautiful because true, because rest of the time, our mind is engaged in some or other activity. In Patanjali Yoga Sutra, Maharishi Patanjali says that five modulation of mind, five vrittis of the mind constantly occupies the mind. And the only time you learn, only time you grow, only time you meet yourself, when you transit from one activity to the another activity. And there is a gap, there is a beautiful gap. And in fact, in life, we start looking forward to or appreciating all the situations, all the people, all the places, all the events that actually gives us that gap. And we start associating with people, events, and places, but the reality is understanding that gap. So Shamji will explore more, and then we can dive really deep into it. It's beautiful, actually. Yeah.
थैंक यू अनुराग भैया।
Mm.
द इनसाइट दैट केम वाज आई लर्न इन द गैप। नाउ I learn in the gap. So we need to know what is the gap, what is in the gap, what is the learning, and who is I. So when this insight came, this sentence, I broke it up into different parts. I learn in the gap. So let me explain it in a, I would say, storytelling way rather than a structured way. And whenever any insight comes to me, what I do is I ratify it by whatever Gurudev has said. Then whatever little I have read and whatever other masters have also to say about that. Because to me, the spoken word is a third party intervention. It is to be taken as a cue to imbibe it yourself, contemplate on it yourself, and come up with your own original thought. For example, I spoke of the gap. This word came to my mind. There are large number of words that can be synonyms to this word. And immediately Anurag Bhaiya linked it to Patanjali Yoga Sutra. And I was unaware of the Patanjali Yoga Sutra. So I'll start from Gurudev saying the seer, the scenery, and the process of seeing. When I first heard it, I imbibed it. I said, wow, without really understanding why was I saying wow. Because, at that point of time, whatever I understood, it was complete for me. But today, what I'm understanding, I still say wow because it is complete for me. I don't know 5 years later how the same thing will remanifest itself in my understanding. Seer, scenery, and the process. Now, imagine there are gaps between these three. Between, not only between the seer and the scenery, but between the process that unfolds. Each step of the process that unfolds, when the new steps takes on and the previous goes, there is a gap. So let us take this entire thing not from the point of view of sphere, process, and scenery, but from the point of view of gaps. This is how the thing came to me. Then, some related examples came. Like when we say Om 3 times, we focus on the 3 Oms. What I have been doing of late is I am focusing in the gaps between the 3 Oms. Like we take inhalation and exhalation of breath, I am now focusing on the bend at both sides, which Gurudev himself has said that the infinity is in the bend. I am still calling it a gap. Then, we say so, hum, so, hum. Now I've started focusing between the gap between so and hum. And you know how this inquiry got triggered actually. I had shared it earlier with Anurag Bhaiya, and we had left it at that, but it didn't leave my subconscious. And the inquiry had come about the gap was somebody had asked some Gurudev of his that what is the best or the supreme seva which a seeker or a disciple can offer to his guru. And that particular Gurudev had said, keep increasing the space between so and hum. Ah, it just struck me. And after that, possibly it got locked in the brain and then I internalized it. And now, what is going to come out from me, this was the trigger point. Now, when we talk of a gap, like seer and scenery, let us say that there's something, or take it like a bank of a river. So on the far bank, there is something, and then on the home bank, there is something. And in between is the river, which is the gap. Now, obviously, in the home bank, because it is I learn, it is not you learn or it is not we learn. It is an individual inquiry. So in the home bank is I. Now, the question will come, what is I? That is a separate topic. But in the far bank, what is there? Now, what a person sees in the far bank are things like, body, materials, relationships, emotions, mind, memory, intellect, ego. These are the things which the seer sees across the gap. Now, supposing there's no gap, the seer and the scenery, they merge, and that is where the shaitan or the devil called mind takes over. That is where the thoughts start controlling. And that is where, if you take the body, मेरे को लिपस्टिक लगाना है, मेरे को कसरत करना है, मेरे को पैसा कमा के अच्छे कपड़े पहनने हैं, 20,000 रुपए के जूते पहनने हैं, all those things, because there is no gap, वो डिजायर आता है, कॉज एंड इफेक्ट होता है, क्षमता डेवलप हो गई है, तो इट ट्रांसलेट्स. And then you land up with 20 varieties of shoes. This is because, the mind is doing the job and the gap is not there between I and the body. Same thing is the material world. कमाए जा रहे हैं, कमाए जा रहे हैं, jumping here, jumping there, creating an empire, exhausting yourself, spoiling your health, getting into unnecessary tensions. If there was a gap between all those ambitions and yourself, possibly a more stable decision making would have come to you. शायद आपके अंदर एक ठहराव आता. Likewise, it's the memory hurts more. आप गैप ले आइए. Thoughts engulf you of all kinds. आप गैप ले आइए. Ego is, as we've discussed in some other video, all your identities, all your beliefs, and all your judgments. Judgments जो हैं आप करिए पर गैप ले आइए. आप identities, I'm a father, bring a gap. I'm an engineer, please bring a gap. You are an engineer. The engineer is not you. beliefs कि the body has to be burnt after death or the body has to be buried. Please bring a gap. Don't get worked up when some near and dear one loses their life and you get into, rigidities of kriya and this and that. And if I don't do this, that will happen to the one who has gone, or this will happen in society to me. So all this is a part which the ego plays, which is the identities, beliefs, and judgments. In May, all that I'm saying is insert a gap. Somebody says कि there's a death in the family. It was actually asked of me recently, do you want a wood cremation or do you want a CNG cremation? Now, it may seem as a very normal question for the crematorium. But for the person who's lost his dear one, it is an unsettling question. But if you have a gap, all those emotions which are coming to you, which are related to death, and the indecisiveness which is coming to you, the gap is the one which separates the two. And you can coolly say, I want X or I want Y, and that is the end of it. Now, this, to my mind, is gap. Now, the thing is, for ease of my own comprehension, I will have number of gaps. A gap between me and materialism, a gap between me and emotions, a gap between me and relationships, a gap between me and my thoughts, a gap between me and my ego. Now, when I get into this kind of a thing and I make it into a practice, the method of making it into the practice is I get up in the morning, by evening, all my moment to moment, I will insert gaps. It'll be very tough, but once you get into it, then it starts happening. And when it starts happening, you realize, यार, इतना जिंदगी का पहाड़ लिए, बोझ लिए घूम रहे थे, all that was not required. Just because of inserting the gap. Now, I have not yet delved into what is a gap. I have just said insert a gap between you and the outside world. Now I will say, जैसे कि उसमें था, keep increasing the space between so and hum. So, I got into words like space, gap, void, ether, vacuum. But then I settled with the word gap. There is a reason why I'm using a non-controversial word called gap. Because when we get into Sahaj, or when we get into any samadhi or dhyan, which is internalized, sorry, if अच्छा गैप जो है मैं थोड़ा और बढ़ा रहा हूं because it's a very subtle subject, so I'm shifting from here and there. I gave you an illusion of a river and there is a distance between the scenery and the seer. But then now when we look at the river, that is when we look at the gap, I realize that it is 360 degrees. It is 10-dimensional. It is all encompassing. Now, when I look at the gap like that and I want to bring it in, I realize if I say space, then it brings in the dimension of time and space. If I say air, then it brings in the dimension of an element. If I say ether, it brings in a finer dimension of an element. If I say void, void actually has a very determined boundary, limit. ये void है. Because moment you limit something, according to me, it's no longer a gap. So it is an ever expanding, ever moving gap. So therefore, I'm using the word gap. I'm not saying gaps for the sake of tutoring myself because my scenery, there are 7, 8 things like material, emotion, mind, ego. The same gap, I am doing A, B, C, D so that it is an ease of putting the gap between me and those things. But in reality, गैप का ना कोई रूप है ना कोई रेखा है. Now I will go slightly deeper. गैप क्या है? I will try to explain. क्या छोड़ना पड़ेगा? क्या आपके पास जब नहीं होगा तब आप गैप को देख पाएंगे? देख पाना भी actually presupposes eyes, vision, and the mind which controls the vision and the eye. तो गैप को देखना भी नहीं है. So in other words, all the 5 sense organs, they come to zero. The mind comes to zero. Mind क्या है? Memory and mind क्या है? Mind is the crucible जहां से थॉट्स निकलते हैं. और थॉट, एक इंडिविजुअल थॉट इज अ कपलिंग between the intellect and the memory. The intellect and the memory. तो अगर हमें थॉट्स कम करने हैं या हमें थॉट्स खत्म करने हैं तो या तो मेमोरी हटा दीजिए या इंटेलेक्ट हटा दीजिए या दोनों हटा दीजिए. तो जब आपने इंटेलेक्ट और मेमोरी दोनों ही हटा दिए, so there is no way you can explain the gap. Now, I was thinking मैं इसको एग्जाम्पल क्या पकड़ूं इस बात को समझाने के लिए. एंड व्हाट केम टू माय माइंड इज कि अगर मैं आपको बोलूं द मोस्ट इंपॉर्टेंट लाइफ गिविंग बेवरेज इन लाइफ, पे, अ ड्रिंक, क्या है? मैं कहूं अगर वो कलरलेस है, टेस्टलेस है, ऑर्डरलेस है, तो आप कहेंगे यार क्या मॉकटेल बना रहे हो, व्हाट काइंड ऑफ अ ड्रिंक आर यू मेकिंग. बट इफ आई से कि उसके लेने से इट विल क्वेंच योर थर्स्ट, यू विल इमीडिएटली से ये तो पानी है. सो द सेम वे गैप को अगर डिस्क्राइब करने बैठेंगे, इट विल बी द टूल्स ऑफ द 5 senses, द इंटेलेक्ट, द मेमोरी, द माइंड एंड द ईगो. पर ये सारे जो हैं ये कुछ ना कुछ गैप के अंदर पोल्यूशन डालेंगे. Like I'm saying, even a void is a pollution. Even air is a pollution. Ether is a pollution. Space, because it has distance, it is a pollution. तो ये सब खत्म. जो अच्छा मेडिटेट करता है उसको एक थर्स्ट आती है, और वो थर्स्ट क्वेंच करने का जो कुआं है वो गैप है. आई पॉज हियर. भैया आप इसमें थोड़ा ऐड या सब्ट्रैक्ट करिए या बोल दीजिए बकवास कर रहे हो.
Hmm. So nice. इसको सिंप्लीफाई तो करना पड़ेगा, बिकॉज इट्स नॉट, वी हैव टू सिंप्लीफाई दिस फॉर पीपल टू अंडरस्टैंड. जो स्क्रिप्चर्स में जनरली इसको बोलते हैं कि विटनेस कॉन्शियसनेस. विटनेस कॉन्शियसनेस गैप के बिना नहीं हो सकती, ये बात ठीक है. आपने वो टच किया, आपने बोला, जैसे शास्त्र में गुरुदेव अक्सर बोलते हैं तदात्म होना. तदात्म होना माने, यू मेंशन दैट योर आइडेंटिटी इज क्लोजली coupled with your body mind consciousness. Body mind consciousness, when we say body mind consciousness, then it's all everything in there. It's 5 elements: memory, mind, memory and ego. माइंड, इंटेलेक्ट एंड ईगो. मेमोरी नहीं बोलते हैं क्योंकि मेमोरी चित्त के साथ रहती है. अष्ट धातु प्रकृति बोलते हैं. अष्ट धातु, यू टच्ड इट एट many many places in your explanation, Shyamji. You says in your insight you touched that, the 5 elements, and that mind, intellect and ego, this is called अष्ट धातु प्रकृति. अब you are right, most of the people are actually, they don't separate themselves from the Asht Dhatu Prakriti. They're so much engrossed into it that they think that only is everything. And that is why there is no control over life. You're right. It's like, it's as if, the beautiful thing is this gap gives you choices. And more you are associated with this Ashtadhatu Prakriti, more you are attached with the Ashtadhatu Prakriti, lesser the gap is there, lesser choices you have. You are more bound. Then you are bound with your instinct, you are bound by your elements, you are bound by your mind, you are bound by your intellect. Your intellect is judging something and thus you are going by that. And that's why there is, that's why people say हमारे पास कोई चॉइस ही नहीं है. दुखी रहते हैं और कहते हैं हमारे पास कोई चॉइस ही नहीं है. क्यों भाई? कभी सोचा नहीं इस बारे में कि दुखी रहना, मिजरेबल रहना जरूरी नहीं है जीवन के अंदर. बिकॉज बट दे डोंट हैव दैट चॉइस. नहीं, जरूर यही यही पार्ट है. राइट. सो दैट this gap between you mentioned that the seer and the scenery, how does this gap come? My experience is meditation is something this naturally creates this gap. You don't have to even think about it. You don't even have to try it. You don't have to say, no, I have listened this knowledge, now I will practice to keep a gap. In fact, with this it may not happen. It may happen, but it will not be natural. With meditation, it becomes natural. Like, for example, my personal experience is that my reactions are not there when witness consciousness is there. People who react, but push of the button, drop of the hat, they react, they slap somebody, they fight, they It's just because that witness is not separate from the scene, seer is not separate from the scenery. That is one. So this is very good, actually, very beautiful what you said. Very nice. And meditation is a most effective way of, you just meditate. The gap will be created automatically. Yeah.
May I come in?
Yeah, Shamji.
Uh, I said that I'll take it in two parts.
Mm,
The first part, actually, I would call it as the art of living,
mm,
and the second part as the art of being.
mm,
What I have discussed just now is the adjective art of living, not our organization.
mm,
अगर गैप आ गया तो ये जीवन जीने की कला है. एंड गैप कैसे आएगा? 24 घंटे आइडिया ले लिया कि भाई गैप करना है, ध्यान में ज्यादा ज्यादा जाना है, तो all the fruits which Bhaiya you have spelled out will naturally come to a person. Now let me move to the other part, the art of being. Living अलग है, being अलग है. Answer again, I would like to find in the gap. अब जो मेरी अनुभूति हुई है, जो आपकी इससे ज्यादा हुई होगी, रीजन बीइंग की जो मैं बताऊंगा, आई रिक्वेस्ट यू टू ऐड ऑन टू दैट. अब ये जो गैप है, ये वो समुंदर है जिनको देव और दानव ने मंथन किया था. इट इज अ churn, and your dev and your danav are within you, and it's a constant churn. और इस गैप में से आपको अमृत भी मिलेगा और आपको विष भी मिलेगा. इस गैप के अंदर क्लैरवॉयंस है, the ability to see into the future. ये एक्चुअली विकृति हैं. One shouldn't get too happy, that I've started getting preternatural powers or supernatural powers. ये क्योंकि ये फिर आपको ले डूबेंगी. They will, sidetrack you this way or that way, and you will fall on your face. Then, इसके अंदर ग्रेस दिखाई देती है, इसके अंदर हीलिंग दिखाई देती है, इसके अंदर इच्छा शक्ति प्रबल होती है. Because this is what the churn has brought out for me, therefore I am sharing. और बड़ा डर लगता है जब ये सब देखते हैं. इसके अंदर डिजायर की लपटें कैसे ड्राई आउट और फिनिश होती हैं, ये दिखाई देता है. इसके अंदर कॉज एंड इफेक्ट दिखाई देता है. तो आई हैव शिफ्टेड द ग्रेविटी ऑफ द गैप. वन वाज कि सियर एंड सीनरी, तो वो एक पार्ट ऑफ लिविंग ऑफ दिस लाइफ के अंदर था. ये ह्यूमन फॉर्म में आए हैं, बर्थ हुई है, डेथ होगी, इन बिटवीन जो लिविंग है वो कैसे कंडक्ट करनी चाहिए, दैट वाज द एक्सप्लेनेशन ऑफ द गैप इन दैट फॉर्म. ये जो है, ये बीइंग, मैं कौन हूं, तो उसके अंदर जब ये सब चीज खत्म हो गई, इट ऑल फिनिशेस. इसके अंदर कॉजल बॉडी, काल जो है, जो पर्सनल काल है, उसकी जो बाउंड्री है, उसके परे गैप है. The ever expanding time and distance in the causal body also forms a ring. Why? Because it is limited by time. And when you become timeless, only then you cross that ring. और जो टाइमलेस है वो मेरे काल से परे है। और मेरे काल से परे क्या है? आत्मा। तो वो आत्मा और मेरा काल के बीच में जो है वो गैप है। I've given a postgraduate thesis on the same subject. Earlier it was undergrad. तो वो जो गैप है, अब वो हिचकोले मारता है, बिकॉज ना उसकी रूप है, ना उसका रेखा है, ना उसमें टाइम है। बट जैसे कि क्वेंचिंग ऑफ द थर्स्ट, it is still a part of my awareness. And my awareness at that time, my means the soul, the Atman. तो आत्मन तक ये काल पहुंचाता है। एंड आत्मा क्या है? अंश ऑफ परमात्मा। तो दिस काल in that way is the super consciousness, is the universal truth, is the Brahman, is the Paramatma. This is the part two, art of being. I finished. आप बोले। ज्यादा हेलुसिनेट तो नहीं कर रहा हूँ?
ना ना, इसमें ना योग में दो चीजें होती हैं। दोनों चीजों को बहुत बहुत जरूरी है, एनालिसिस और सिंथेसिस। एनालिसिस में ये बहुत जरूरी है, पहले आपको अलग अलग करना आना चाहिए। पहले आपको अलग अलग करना आना चाहिए। इसलिए पहले हमेशा ये कराया जाता है, शरीर को अलग करो, मन को अलग करो। शरीर में भी जो और ज्यादा गहरे जाने लगते हैं, आयुर्वेद को पालन पालन करने लगते हैं, वो देखते हैं ये पृथ्वी तत्व है, ये जल तत्व है, ये अग्नि तत्व है, ये वायु तत्व है, ये आकाश है। और ये तत्व हैं, ये पांचों तत्व हैं, ये खेल रहे हैं। और ये शरीर में उनको तुम फील कर सकते हो, उनको भी तुम और बारीकी से एटलीस्ट महसूस करने लगते हो। फिर बोलो मन अलग है, फिर बोलो बुद्धि एकदम अलग है, फिर बोलो मैं चित्त, मेरे जो इंप्रेशंस हैं, मेरे कॉन्सेप्ट्स हैं, मेरे ये सब हैं, ये अलग है। फिर मेरा अहंकार अलग है। गैप क्रिएट कर सब में, आप यू आर मेंशनिंग दैट गैप क्रिएट कर देते। फिर बोलो ठीक है, ये सब है, इन सबको अलग अलग करने वाला भी कोई एक है जो ये सारा देख रहा है, वो मैं हूं, मैं इनसे अलग हूं। वहां वो कॉजल बॉडी और मैं जो आत्मन हूं वो परमात्मन का ही हिस्सा है। ये एनालिसिस ज्ञान है। फिर इस एनालिसिस को ड्रॉप करना बहुत जरूरी है। तो चूंकि जब जब जैसे ही वो आत्मन के लेवल पे आते ना, ये सब कोई गैप नहीं है, सब सब बेकार है, सब फालतू है। ये सिर्फ इस सब का रोल इतना ही था कि यहाँ को ये अलग अलग करना था, बस इनको इनको अलग अलग करने का पर्पस यही था कि कुछ अलग है ही नहीं भाई साहब, ये सब एक ही एनर्जी, सारी की सारी फ्रीक्वेंसीज अलग अलग स्पेक्ट्रम में, एक ही लाइट में सातों कलर हैं, वो एक ही वाइट लाइट से निकले हुए हैं। तो दैट इज द, जिसको अद्वैतवाद इसी को बोल दिया। Shankaracharya ji would never take interest in this discussion. He will say, "What nonsense you're talking." He will just throw both of us out of this Zoom meeting. He's like, come on, what gap you are saying, what elements you are saying, what mind you are talking, and why you're saying time and beyond time. And you say Kal and Mahakal. Hey, come on, everything is Mahakal. Everything is just the different flavors of Mahakal. But you're right. Just to say this, I mean, he was blessed that he had this knowledge by birth. But if you do not do the analysis, if you do not break it up, then this unification will also not happen. But Gurudev gives this example. He says, साबुन को धोना पड़ता है, पहले साबुन लगाओ, फिर साबुन को भी धो दो, सेपरेट करो, अलग अलग देखो, फिर बोलो कुछ भी अलग नहीं है। वो लाली मेरे लाल की जित देखूं तित लाल, लाली देखन मैं चली मैं भी हो गई लाल। कबीरदास जी बोलते थे कि मैं ढूंढने चला, मुझे मेरे लाल की लाली देखनी थी, मुझे वो रोशनी देखनी थी, ढूंढा मैंने सब सेपरेशन हो गया, लेकिन जैसे ही मैंने मेरे लाल की लाली, मैंने आत्मन को मैंने महसूस किया, फिर मैंने देखा सब कुछ मेरा आत्मन ही तो है, इसके अलावा कुछ है ही नहीं। और लाली देखन मैं चली मैं भी हो गई लाल, मैं वही बन गया। तो मेरा अहंकार भी वही बन गया, मेरी मेरी मेमोरी भी वही बन गया, मेरी ईगो भी वही बन गया, मेरा इंटेलेक्ट भी, मेमोरी भी, और मेरे पांचों तत्व भी वही बन गए। हाँ, हमारे लोग
Beautiful.
हाँ, हमारे लोग बड़े समझदार थे, तो वो बोलते थे पृथ्वी देवता, अग्नि देवता, इन्हें सभी देवता है। तो दैट इज ट्रू, बट यू आर राइट। जस्ट टू हैव दिस जस्ट टू हैव दिस बीइंग, दिस इन लिविंग, फर्स्ट लेवल इज, यूर राइट, इज सेपरेशन। धागों को अलग अलग करने के बाद ही तो हम एक स्वेटर तैयार कर सकते हैं। फिर जब सारे सारे धागे बुन दिए जाते हैं अलग सही तरीके से, पहले सारे धागे उलझे हुए हों तो उनसे आप स्वेटर नहीं बना सकते, लेकिन जब आप उनको बुन देते हो अलग अलग करके, तब धागे नहीं होते, तब लाल धागा नहीं होता, पीला धागा नहीं होता, सफेद धागा नहीं, आप बोले स्वेटर है, कितना सुंदर स्वेटर है। Then that is unification. So beautiful. So you are right. Just getting into the unification also, getting into the gap is necessary. So nice.
So therefore,
Mm,
if I repeat again,
mm.
I learn in the gap.
Wow, Shyamji, so nice. So very, very good, Shyamji. So very nice session we had, and then it's recorded. We'll just see who is lucky one to get access to it and use this knowledge. Yes, Shyamji. Thank you,
Yeah,
Shyamji. Jai
thank
Gurudev,
you.
Shyamji. Jai Gurudev.
Thank you.
Jai
Thank
Gurudev.
you.
Jai Gurudev,
Thank
Shyamji.
you.